As Christy was saying, I'm Chris Rasmussen with my wife, Karla Rasmussen. And this is a trip that is very COVID heavy in a couple of different ways. So this trip was originally planned for, I believe, in the spring of 2020.
Yes.
We had been planning all in 2019 through Christmas. We were going to go in May of 2020, but then of course, everybody knows what happened in the months that were leading up to the spring of 2020. We were supposed to go at the height of the lockdowns for the pandemic. So this trip quickly got away from us and we had to cancel. We had to cancel hotels, we had to cancel flights, we had to cancel a whole bunch of different things. However, we seem to be extremely lucky when it comes to our travel planning. And after this trip was canceled, we found a contest to write an essay to potentially win a free trip to Poland. Karla skillfully wrote the essay about what we would have done had we gone to the trip that was canceled with COVID. We ended up winning the contest from Tourism Poland. We got to go to Poland for free. We just had to pay for our hotel rooms and food, anything that we wanted to do on the ground. Tourism Poland covered our flights, covered our transportation around Poland. I think we flew 6 different times on this trip, thanks to Tourism Poland. They said, don't bother scheduling anything else. You want to go between the cities, we'll pay for it. However, we like to ride the train. So we said, how about we organize a little bit of it and then use the flights when we need them? And so that's what ended up happening. So we were able to go in May and June of 2023. It's a gorgeous time over in Poland. And so these early photos here are us leaving Regina and flying out. So we flew with Polish Lot and some of the snacks and dainties that they had for us on the trip. It was absolutely fantastic. Air Canada and WestJet could learn a little bit about serving food on flights from these folks, also about legroom. Yes. But that's for another day. So this trip involved us going to Poland. We started out in Krakow in the south, went up to Warsaw, which is in the central area of Poland, and then we finished up in Gdańsk, Gdynia, and Sopot, which is on the north side of Poland by the sea. Flew into Warsaw from Toronto, Warsaw to Krakow by plane, enjoyed Krakow, then back up to Warsaw by train, enjoyed ourselves there, and then back to Gdańsk by train, and then we finished the rest of the trip by plane, just for a little bit of speed. But we absolutely love riding the train when we're anywhere. You get to see the countryside a bit better, you get to slow down, and that's what we're all about when we travel. So we started off in Krakow. Very, very beautiful city. This is the cloth market.
And if you're not familiar with Poland, Krakow is a little different. It was not ruined or damaged nearly as badly during the Second World War because the Germans actually set up a lot of their base camp and headquarters in Krakow. So a lot of what you see hasn't been rebuilt, hasn't been restored to the same degree as places like Warsaw and up north. So this cloth market has been in existence, I think, since the 1300s. It's quite famous and it's in this middle of this very large squares.
So there's a castle here in Krakow, and what originally happened with this cloth market, it was an open air market for all of the vendors in the area to bring in their fruits and vegetables, textiles, their blacksmithing, all of that good stuff. And finally, the king at the time said, well, why don't you start setting up stalls and leave your stuff here permanently so that you don't have to haul it in every day? And then eventually it got covered over and became a mall, a shopping center. And so this was done a very, very long time ago, and it still stands today. But instead of being wares and groceries and things like that, it's tourist tchotchkes and souvenirs and things like that. So it's absolutely beautiful. But this is our flight in, and you'll notice from these photos here, farming is still very, very old school over there. They haven't gotten into our system in North America because this is the way they've done it. So it's more of the strip farms, like what was originally tried here in Canada when everybody came over from Europe. And they still do it that way. And it's interesting, in some of these communities, you'll see along the roads and things like that, the houses are right next to each other and then the properties go straight back. So it's a different way to do it, and it's beautiful from the sky.
This is us coming into Krakow on a small plane. And if you can use the laser pointer there, in the center of the right photo, you can see a sort of a band of trees going around there. That's the former walls of the city, and it's now called the Planty. They've taken most of the walls down, but there's this beautiful green space with a path. So it's very popular with locals who like to bike and walk and jog through there.
Every evening after supper, the park is filled with people going out and enjoying the Planty and just going for a walk around the outside. It's absolutely gorgeous, and we found ourselves doing it as well. So this is our first day in Krakow, and this is one of the main churches in the center of the square, and it's famous because the trumpeter comes out of the top of the tower and plays. And so very, very popular. People are just standing around waiting for him to play all the time. But this was actually our meeting spot for one of our good friends who we'll catch up with later. We weren't on the ground for 5 minutes and we were already getting text messages from him. When are we going for beers? So it was nice to see him.
I'll just maybe also point out, you can see the Ukrainian banner at the top. This in Krakow, it was probably about a 12-hour drive to the Ukrainian border. So it was also an interesting time to go because the Russian invasion of Ukraine had happened not that long before. So we did have some questions wondering, why were we going to this place? A lot of folks thought it was still dangerous being so closely associated with Ukraine. But Krakow was often the first major city that refugees were coming to from Ukraine. So they were welcoming them with open arms in many cases. The people themselves were doing a lot, offering shelter, food, clothing, that sort of thing. So you'll see that in a few of our pictures here, but Krakow was often the first place where they came.
Had we not been informed before we got on the ground that there was a war 2 countries over, we would never have known. There was no side effects of that at all on this trip. And we were questioned all the time, why are you going? Why are you going? We're 2 countries away. So this is our lovely apartment that we rented when we were there. And this is right in the middle of Old Town. This would have been probably a very small apartment back in the day. And we were lucky enough to have a balcony that overlooked 2 of the church courtyards that were right there. Just absolutely fantastic. And so this is our friend that we were talking about in the right-hand photo. He is a tour guide in Krakow. He is a personal tour guide. To be able to be a tour guide in Poland, you have to pass a test. You are tested on local knowledge, local history, all of that good stuff, so that you're not giving false information to tourists and scamming them. They're paying good money. They want good information. They want to show you around. We had met him a couple of years ago, several years ago, actually, on our first trip, and we kept in touch. Fantastic gentleman. And we get together every time we go over to Poland. So this is one of our favorite little pubs, bars, whatever you want to call it, get-togethers in Krakow, and it's kind of known as the Green Balloon.
Its actual name is Yama Michalika, Yama Michalika. And it was built and opened in 1895 and was a very popular place with intellectuals and artists, people involved in drama. So it's kind of like a hippie commune of sorts, but it's been kept up in very good shape. There's lovely pieces of stained glass throughout, as you can see in that one picture there. And the atmosphere is just very inviting.
The food is fantastic too. Very traditional Polish food. The beer and the beverages are fantastic. Just a quiet little place to go and just kind of get away from everybody else, because it's not hot with the tourists, because it's very, very traditional and it's tucked away. So if you know where it is, you can have a quiet little afternoon lunch or dinner and not be around all the tourists. So those are the places that we try and find when we travel, because we want to do what the locals do and we want to eat what everybody else is eating.
So this is the Kościuszko Mound, and it was first erected in the city in commemoration of a Polish national leader, and it was actually modeled after some of their prehistoric mounds. There are several in the Krakow area. Some of them are very, very old. This one is not as old, and it's just over 1,000 feet tall, and it has this sort of serpentine path that links its way up to the top. So you can see we're about halfway up there on that top left picture, and then the view from the top on the right, and some of the battlements and things like that around there. So it's quite interesting to see.
So this, I'm not sure why that did that. There we go. So this is the church that you could see off to the right from our apartment. We were overlooking the courtyard here. This establishment is very famous because of the pipe organ that's here. We were lucky enough to get to go to a concert there the night after we arrived. And it was one of those events, if you've ever got to hear a pipe organ concert that isn't either a funeral or an actual service, it shakes your body because these organs can move so much air. It's absolutely incredible to be in there. The other nice thing about Krakow is there's the university there, and they have a very, very famous music program. So some of the best musicians in the world are studying at this university. They performed alongside the pipe organ that night. We got incredibly lucky and were able to catch that. Just a beautiful facility.
So some of the food that Krakow is known for, I'll start in the top right corner. That is an aubergine, which is like a bagel. More than one is called an aubergine, so you have multiple. Down below on the right, we have some Pacific cheese on the left side of that picture. Traditionally, it comes in little football shapes. It is a smoked sheep's cheese, so it's got a distinct taste. We've got pierogies, of course. We've got golubki, and then the last one I had to look up because I couldn't remember how to pronounce it. Kartaja, which is a potato dumpling with pork filling, which is quite tasty as well. And then they're also very known for their cutlets throughout Poland. So.
And then the supplements that come with every meal is probably one of my favorite things because we don't do it that often here in Saskatchewan and in Canada, but it reminds me of my grandmother when I was little. And we had a lot of Ukrainian influence around us when I was a kid. And so little supplement dishes like this, just a little bit of cut up cucumber with some mayo on top and some dill or something like that, or maybe some quick refrigerator pickles that were made over lunch. They come with every meal. And so for me, I was just in heaven for that type of stuff. This was a fun trip. So as we mentioned, our friend, his name is Christoph, and he knows pretty much everything about the city of Krakow. This is Nowa Huta. So as in new.
The new steel mill is what it means.
So the new steel mill.
Yes. And so it still is one of the largest planned socialist cities outside of Russia. It was built post-World War II and was designed as residence for the workers of the steel mill. So if you remember again, in the early days of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, we saw a lot of people were stranded, hiding, taking refuge at that steel mill that we saw on the news quite often. This was be a very similar operation, and it's still working today. But this was a very much planned community, and each part of this neighborhood had self-enclosed self-sufficiency, if you will. So there were banks of apartment buildings, there were schools, doctors' offices, places to shop, things like that, all within your own neighborhood. So you did not really need to travel outside of your neighborhood. It is now considered a suburb of Krakow, and there's a lovely tram that takes you out there. That's just the city's kind of growing together a little bit, but it is fairly untouched. There's a few things that have changed. And we'll go down to this next picture here. You can see the little blue stand in the top right corner. That is an aubergine stand. So they would sell those bagels there, very popular in the morning. We have a fruit stand there. We saw many of those on different corners. The center lower picture there is a big square between some of the large Soviet style apartment blocks. There used to be a very large statue of Lenin there, and it was taken down, of course, after the war, and things were becoming more independent for Poland, but it was a very imposing figure that was there for many years. This is something that's unique to Poland. In many places can still be found. It's called a milk bar. Does that ring a bell with anybody? Does anyone have memories or heard of those sorts of things? Okay, it's a little foreign concept. What it basically is a government subsidized restaurant of sorts. It was initially made to help out everyone during those sort of communist times. Everyone was considered to be equal. We need to have some affordable food. Now a lot of people who utilize these are students, pensioners, people who have limited incomes, but it's very good, wholesome, inexpensive food that you can get. And it's cafeteria style. We were told by our friend Christoph that if the staff is smiling, it's probably one that's made for tourists. The real ones, everyone is very stern and businesslike. So if you see someone smiling, it's probably not a real one. But we have some things here. We have kefir in the top left corner there, which is like sour cream to drink. We had borscht, we had golubki, cabbage rolls, potatoes, and things like that. Very filling. We couldn't eat it all. And you can see another gentleman in the picture in the lower right over there. That's Tony, who was another friend of Christoph's who comes from Finland. And he had not been to a milk bar before either. So we kind of did this group field trip out there and were able to experience it. It was quite a lot of fun and a little bit different from what we're used to in North America.
The food was just like grandma used to make,
Yeah.
because it's grandma's in the kitchen and they're from the local area. The nice thing about this, the whole meal for the 4 of us, and it was more food than we could ever have eaten, was like $10 for the 4 of us. It is still government subsidized, but everyone is welcome. And because the food is so good, everybody goes.
People bring containers from home.
Yep.
If they're filled up with soups and things to eat for the week, so.
And so you'll see where, I think it's in one of the photos, I believe it's that lady there. She's got her shopping bag. It's full of like Tupperware containers. She's coming to get her soups for lunch for the week because it's so good and it's so cheap. Why bother doing it yourself?
It is called a milk bar because it does have origins in dairy as well. That would have been an expensive thing. So another way to make that more affordable for the average person.
So tasty, highly recommended if you can find somebody to read the menu for you.
Also, there's no English, so.
Yeah, none. They don't
Maybe it's
speak
a real
a lick of it. Yeah, it's great. So this is a bit of our touring around the community of Krakow. We're in Wawel Castle here in the interior courtyard, and the trees and the ivy that are growing up on the inside are just stupendous. Absolutely beautiful. So when we wander, I should actually say travel. When we travel, we wander quite a bit. We'll fill up our backpack with food and drink, and we will just walk until we get tired, have something to eat, and then try and find our way back. And on our trips around the world so far, this has proven to find some incredible places, including these little gardens that are tucked in all over the place. It's our favorite way to travel, but you have to have a little bit of confidence when you're doing that because it's a high probability of getting lost. We, again, have been lucky so far. Every time that we've gotten lost, we have found probably one of the nicest pieces of our trip. So don't be afraid of it. Just be cautious when you're traveling like that.
This is the Jewish quarter, former Jewish quarter that's had a resurgence in people moving back there. This is Kazimierz. It's quite famous. This is the restaurant called Ariel. You can see the top left corner. Steven Spielberg filmed a lot of Schindler's List here in this area, and it's become quite famous for the economic boost that he gave to the community, bringing the filming crew there to eat, and it actually rejuvenated the neighborhood. So it's thriving now. It's very trendy. This was the first time we had an official kosher meal. So we had some latke pancakes and some lovely soups. And again, it was very cozy and it felt very welcoming to be in there. Everyone was very friendly.
This is apparently the spot that Spielberg would go and hide when he had had enough of filming. As you can imagine, Schindler's List is a very, very heavy movie. And as the director producer on that one, I don't know how he made it through it with such heavy content. We've been to Schindler's Factory. That was incredible. And we were only there for 2 hours and it completely drained us. I can't imagine working on that movie. So apparently this is the place that he would go and just kind of hide and chill out and just try and get away from stuff. Beautiful place. The food was phenomenal.
These are some photos, and we took many of the new Jewish cemetery, also in Kazimierz. It is a lot newer than the old Jewish cemetery, which is very ancient. This one was founded in 1800. And it's about 11 acres in size and has over 10,000 graves. During the Second World War, it was pretty much flattened. A lot of the memorial stones were removed, they were sold, they were used in infrastructure and some of the camps nearby. Very sad story, but after the war had concluded and things were getting back to normal, there was some funding available. There were some very philanthropic people who actually helped to restore the cemetery. So the picture in the top center there, you can see is actually a kind of an amalgamation of stones that were not able to be replaced. They were parts of them. That was sort of throughout. And then you can see it does look a little overgrown. There's ivy on everything, but it is a very peaceful park-like setting. I believe they were the only 2 people other than the caretaker there, and you would never know you were in the middle of this big bustling city. So
there's a main bus route and road just on this side here. I think that's the main road there. And there was a gas station right behind us. We didn't even know until I came up to the edge of the fence. I wanted to find out where the edge of the cemetery was. And here's a major intersection with a mall across the street. We didn't hear any of it. It was incredibly peaceful. The birds, and then of course, all the little critters that are habitating this place
I
now.
will also just mention, I was surprised by the size of snails. They are probably bigger than a crab apple. They were a good size, largest snails I'd ever seen. So you'll see several pictures of snails. I was very fascinated by them.
So this on the left is probably my favorite bar in the world. They make their own beer and they don't mess around with flavors. It's just excellent old school recipes that I just dropped my remote control. But it's one of my favorite places in the world to go because of the flavors that they play with. The beer that I'm drinking there is a buckwheat honey beer and just absolutely phenomenal. But the problem is we went there earlier in the day and they were supposed to be closed for the day. So I was like heartbroken. So we walked around the community for part of the rest of the day and then came back and found out that they were only closed for part of the day and we ended up getting to go in. So we were about to move on the next day and I wouldn't have got to visit. So.
And it's in a restored train station, which is really just neat architecturally to look at.
So the old train barns where they would have stored the trains to do the work on them has been turned into an event center and club for at night. The ticket booth in the front where we're sitting, so that's where you would have bought your tickets, that's now the restaurant for the daytime. So they multi-purpose this entire facility, brought it back, and it's gorgeous to visit. Very, very nice. The dragon is, of course, a Krakow dragon. Every one of the communities has a protector. Krakow's protector is the dragon. The reason it's a dragon is because as they were digging more dungeons under Valval Castle, they found what are believed to be whale bones, mammoth bones. Back then, you wouldn't have been able to process animals so large. And so, of course, myths was that it was a dragon. So the dragon protects Krakow. The mermaid protects Warsaw, and Neptune protects Gdansk, Gdynia, and Sopot in that region. So every one of the major cities has a protector. So you're going to start, as we go through some of the photos, see those themes come up with each one of the different cities. They're everywhere. Light posts, fire hydrants, no parking signs, things like that. They will have their protectors on there, just like we use our moose and moose jaw. Everything has our moose on it. Everything has their dragon.
The dragon breathes fire as well.
Oh, yeah. So nighttime back to the cloth market, their carriages are going around all the time, just like around New York Central Park. And then there were signs of solidarity with Ukraine all over the place. This was being projected onto this building from across the street from one of the apartments.
Just some other random pictures from Krakow before we move on. In the center, you see the Barbican, which is one of the remaining pieces of the gate that the Conti would contract with. On the left side, we have Florianska Street and Florianska Tower at the far end, and then there's a lot of artwork there on the wall. The top right is taken from the top of one of those universities that had to deal with the music. There's a little cafe up there open to the public. And then the lower right picture was a very interesting shopping place. It was in a very ancient building. You can see we're looking down from on the top and there's escalator stairs. There's original brick walls and things like that. It was quite fascinating to see the juxtaposition of modern fashion in this ancient castle-like building. So our friend Christoph had taken us there just as a curiosity of sorts to see what was there.
For the folks that are watching the Zoom online, I see that there are some comments in the chat function. Just because of the way we're sharing the screen, I can't see those comments right now. So if you have questions, we'll try and come back to them at the end, okay?
Some other just kind of random pictures there. That's the inside of the clock market in the top left. The picture below that is the Unity Tower, which is the tallest building in Krakow, built in 1979, and it's 27 stories. So we don't think that's a skyscraper by American standards, but everything else there is fairly old and low. So that does stand out a little bit. I have a picture of some neon pierogies because I love pierogies. Up above that is a picture from, I'm going to get the name, the Galicia Jewish Museum, which was quite interesting to go to. They had some traveling exhibits there. This picture that we have of photographs was actually in a, I don't want to say a time capsule, but they were trying to save some Jewish pictures from their family during the war years, and they actually were able to find it years later, dig it back up, and they were mostly intact. There was also some lovely photographs there on display of it's like vanishing Galicia, and that's a term we may know in Saskatchewan as what Poland was referred to at one time. And it had cemeteries that were basically abandoned, old communities that had kind of been moved away from that sort of thing. And then on the right, you can see me with the lady with the ermine painting, which is a Da Vinci painting. We spent a lot of time in this lovely place, and I did get a stuffed ermine as a souvenir.
If you go to Poland, one of their cultural activities are museum nights or museum days. If you own and run a museum in Poland, you are expected to offer free admissions at certain times. Some choose to take part in museum night, where the museums are open late and everybody can go for free. This one chooses, I think it was a Tuesday. Admissions are free on Tuesday. And so we just happened again to get very lucky and found out that this one was open. We got to probably see some of the most amazing artwork that I have seen in my life. I've never seen a Da Vinci up close.
Rembrandt.
I was taken aback by Rembrandt's, The Good Samaritan. Rembrandt's The Good Samaritan. It looked like it glowed. I never understood before this trip why the masters were the masters. I finally got to see one in person. My opinion of art has changed as a result. So we have moved on to Warsaw. We took the train, as I mentioned. I absolutely love the train. My clicker is goofing around here. Sorry about that. There we go. So we love to take the train because we get to see the countryside. It's so cheap. It's so comfortable. You order a tea on the train and you don't need a lid because it's so smooth. They don't bother with it. So we get off the train. We come up to the bus depot and we're trying to find the business to get our keys to our next apartment. We know it's in the area. We're not worried about it. We're going to walk around and find it. So we're taking pictures of stuff. We come around the corner and sitting at one of the cafes is Tony, from Finland, who he had just met the other day. He was heading home. He hadn't mentioned that he was going to Warsaw to fly home. And we found him in a random cafe around the corner.
Small world.
Small world. It's just so much fun when we get to do that. So this is Old Town in Warsaw. This was completely decimated in the war. There was a chunk of the buildings, not in this photo, but we'll get to it shortly. There was a chunk of one apartment building with a bar underneath it left. That's it. The Germans were across the river and constantly bombarded the square with artillery until it was flattened. Most of the city was flattened as a result as well. So in Warsaw, while it looks very, very authentic and very, very old, it's not. It's all been reconstructed, which still is incredibly nice. It's just, it makes you think about the war a little bit more here. Whereas when we were in Krakow, it was very new. They kind of call it like the Chicago. So it's a different feel to, or pardon me, Warsaw is viewed as the Chicago of Poland because of the newer buildings that were there. And we'll get to that in a moment. So this is our apartment.
Yes. We are in Old Town, just off one street, and we're up on the second floor, I believe it was. And we have this wonderful staircase that takes us up there, and we've got a neat little view down the street. So some interiors. We were told later that this is actually considered a very large apartment. It had a separate bedroom, a large living dining room, and a massive kitchen by Polish standards. So that was pretty cool to see in this, again, respectable building. And then we started to walk. The weather wasn't the greatest, so we thought we'll find a museum somewhere we had been before on a previous trip. And this is the Poland Museum. So it is the history of Polish Jews. It doesn't just focus on the Holocaust and things of that nature. It looks back to ancient times. So there's a few pictures. There's so much to see there. We were there several hours longer than we expected.
Yeah.
It goes from, again, medieval and even pre-medieval times all the way up to about the Second World War. And there's some wonderful things to see there. On our way back to Old Town, we stopped at the Saxon Garden. This was a place we had been to on our last trip and really enjoyed. This used to be the palace grounds for royalty and that sort of thing. We have the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier in the lower left corner there. It is in the remnant of one of the pieces of the palace. And actually, if you look in the bottom right corner, that is the tomb in the middle. There are plans, I've heard, that they might actually try to rebuild some of this palace over some of the old footprint. Again, just some of the lovely waterways. We saw tons of birds and swans. And again, kind of a nod to the war that was happening in Ukraine at the time with the graffiti on the top right corner there. Some more food. We love eating, of course. It was the first time I saw a pierogi mascot. So I'm like, I'll sign up for that job. I would love to do that. Represent pierogies everywhere. This was a chain restaurant that offered kind of that grandma style Polish cooking. Very hearty, very good. The bottom row of pictures there where Chris is looking a little sad is a Hungarian restaurant we had visited on our last trip in 2015. And it always causes him a great defeat. He could never finish his plate. As you can see, the cutlet in the lower left corner there is bigger than the plate and it's hanging over, bigger than his head.
It's the size of a pizza. It is the size of a 12-inch pizza.
Yeah, and you can see he ate most of it. He did better than our last trip. We mistakenly ordered a meal, which we thought would be good for 2 people. It was a pile of meat about 1.5 feet high. It was too much. But again, I've got the picture in the middle of the supplements with the pickles and the sauerkraut, very popular as an appetizer.
And then a vinegar potato salad, so Hungarian potato salad. Again, supplements with every meal. I absolutely love it. In the top right-hand corner, the plate in front of me is bigos. It's, how do I describe it?
Hunter stew.
It's a hunter stew. Basically, it's sauerkraut with shredded cabbage added, raisins, wine, and pork. And it's stewed for about a day. And then apparently you'd never eat it on the day you make it. You eat it the day afterwards because it keeps getting better. Now, there's controversy about serving this in restaurants because the moms and grandmas at home will leave it on the stove covered and it just keeps getting better because that's what it is. But in a restaurant, you can't do that. So there's a little bit of a fight between who has the best because you can't really leave it on the stove at the restaurant. This is one of those happy accidents that I had mentioned earlier. And that's the reason why I told the story that we wander and get lost on purpose. We found this after we got lost. This light park is down by the main river, but hadn't been published anywhere because it had just opened. So in any of the tourism guides, there were no posters for it. There was no advertising for it online yet, nothing. Had we not gotten lost that day, we never would have found this park. And so most of the time you see a laser show like this, very much like outside of the Bellagio in Las Vegas. However, what they've done different is out of the middle of this pond right here, they put up a wall of mist. So in the bottom right-hand corner, there's misters that are in front of that beautiful fountain, and they project images onto the mist. So you can almost watch a movie on the water show. And the story that they were telling that night was the goose that laid the golden egg. And so the much more ancient version of that story. It was incredible to see. Very, very cool.
And just the timing between us first finding it in 2015 when it had first opened to the popularity it has achieved now. It's actually called Multimedia Park is its official name. People were bringing blankets and drinks and like it was just this big crowded square of places. And it's just beside the Vistula River. So it's quite a lovely place to go date or night. This is the Museum of Warsaw, and it is in Old Town. In the top left picture there, Kristen maybe is a laser corner. It is the kind of light bluish gray building there, and it is known as the extraordinary storyteller of ordinary things. So the part that we focused on with our visit was a lot about what was found during the rebuilding process of Old Town post Second World War. So things that had been found, they tried to restore things based on paintings, drawing, the odd little bit of architectural landmarks and things like that. And so it was a jumble of interesting things, just like the title. These are some other sites around Warsaw. In the top right corner, we have one of the Warsaw Mermaids. This one is in the Old Town Square. There are several throughout the city. There's one down by the Vistula River that actually was modeled on the face of a poet who was a part of the resistance movement during the Second World War. On the far left, we have the little insurgent statue. A lot of young people, children included, were integral to the Polish Home Army's fight and resistance to the German invaders during the Second World War. So this is a memorial to all of the young people who lost their lives. We have a hurdy-gurdy man, which was really neat in the center there. The top is just under the Old Town. We've got a tunnel that kind of goes through it in the center. And then the lower right corner is again part of their fortifications. This is Warsaw's Barbican outside of the Old Town. We met up with my cousins who are from the Gdańsk area, and we will get to Gdańsk in the north here. Sorry, we're kind of going on here. We met them at a Georgian restaurant, and it was something we've never experienced before. So this is one picture that I took. I think I probably missed the other ones, but we had these dumplings in the top right corner. Wonderful atmosphere there with Georgian rugs and decorations. We met up with them. My cousin Radek is to my left in the picture there, his wife Ola, and then their son Yutek, who is the same age as my daughter, which is kind of cool. We went to the historic Warsaw Zoo. And this is famous. You may be familiar with the story, the zookeeper's wife. It was a place in the picture in the center on the right-hand side there. This is their villa where they actually hid and helped over 300 Jews escape during the Second World War. Jan and Antonina Zawinski, and they are very important to the city of Warsaw as well as the zoo itself. They were the zookeepers there at the time. Top right picture is some Polish storks, and the bottom right picture is one of the native horses that live there. So kind of cool. This is Lazinski Park, or the Royal Bath Park, sometimes it's called. From about the 1700s, it's a beautiful place. This is where I found out my North American allergy medication did not work very well in Poland. I was stuffed up for the next 2 days until I got some local medicine. Very cool place. We've got some other pictures from along the Vistula here. We've got a big long pathway that goes from that park back basically to the multimedia park with the lights and their stadium in the lower right corner. And then just some other pictures from around the Warsaw area there. In the lower left, it says Pamiętamy, which is remembrance. That is the symbol of the fighting Poles, which again came to light in the Second World War and was the symbol of the home army, that sort of thing. In the lower right corner, we have a picture of some food. Those are zapiekanki, which are like an open-faced pizza bread, which are very delicious. A pair of socks that I bought in the top center there. The skarpetki is the name for socks in Polish, and again, they've got the mermaid on.
So we're getting to the north now. So this is what you're all here for, and we'll go through this. You'll notice the black piece here, very out of place compared to the other buildings, but what it is, it's a crane. And so they would have used it to unload boats in medieval Poland. So this would have been the main channel. They would have brought the boats in, they would have unloaded them, and then they would have moved that material, whatever it was, into some of the storage facilities that were beside it. And so the area we stayed in, if I remember correctly, was called Granary Island, because the whole island was filled with these buildings that are now apartments and things like that, but they were granaries. So it's absolutely incredible to see this. So this is
photo on the left, yeah.
Where we stayed. And then so you would just walk up and over, and this is Old Town. So that crane would have been right about in here. And so this is Gdansk as compared to the Black Sea, Baltic Sea. And then Gdynia is up here. Sopot in the middle, and they're all connected by a walking trail. You can literally walk.
The Tri-City area.
So just amazing to be able to do that. These guys here are killing those trees. It's mistletoe. Mistletoe is a parasitic plant that will feed off of whatever it's on. And while we think it's beautiful and part of Christmas and the holidays here, it's unfortunately killing the landscape in some areas. So they are working to eradicate in some spots. This is the main train station in Gdansk that we came in on. Just renovated, and in fact, they're still pulling down some of the scaffolding that they had done to rejuvenate that building. These are the old granaries left over from the war, haven't been touched. In fact, some of the times, if the light was just right, you could see into them, and there are trees and plants growing inside them now, completely taken over by nature again. However, they are being renovated into high-end apartments.
Or if they're in such bad condition, they need to be taken down. They are rebuilt in a sympathetic way, with the architecture reflecting what they used to look like.
So this is the inside of one of those renovations or rebuilds that we were seeing across the street there. This is our apartment for in Gdansk. High-end, very, very nice, a little balcony, and you're overlooking the canal as well. Across the street is your local corner store, so you can get anything that you need there. Prices aren't inflated compared to the grocery store, so everybody has their local grocery store right in their neighborhood. These things are absolutely delicious. These hot dogs inside a closed bun, so you put your sauces in first and then you push your hot dog in and the sauces go up the side. They're just catching on here in North America, or for the last little bit, but they're a staple over there.
We've got Polish apples in the other picture. They're lovely and some of the best apples I've ever tasted.
So you'll see these little apartments all over the place being constructed, and we're getting into Old Town now. And so this is where you can find almost anything that you want. There's Neptune there. He's by City Hall in a couple of different spots, but this is the main fountain there. And we'll show you a better picture in a little bit, but this is right in the middle of the afternoon. Oddly enough, not that busy. But this is again, right after international travel had opened back up for COVID. So there weren't a lot of folks. Some of the shop owners were lamenting the fact that there weren't a lot of customers just yet, but everybody was still happy to be open again. And of course, we had the same sentiments here in Canada. It was just nice to be able to get out again. Incredible architecture. Again, this is in the north. This is a modern shopping center that has been made to look sympathetic, and inside is a creek running right down the middle of the mall. And that's because it's the way that the creek runs through the neighborhood. And so they left it as they did part of the mall to be sympathetic to the area. We went and saw Top Gun Maverick there. That's on, oddly enough, on opening night that the new Top Gun movie came out. Karla's cousin hadn't seen it yet, and so we went, and it was in English. So they are very cognizant of speaking different languages. And so one way to do that is to go to American movies to pick up the language.
It is subtitled.
Yeah. So there's that same Neptune statue at night. The old town just comes alive at night. Everybody, it's like the gathering place for the whole community. You go, you have coffee, wine, beer, tea after supper. Maybe you go visit some friends or family or whatever it is, but it is certainly a gathering place in the evening. This is the famous Malbork Castle, if I'm saying it correctly. I struggle with Polish very, very much. Karla is doing better at it than I am, but so this is Malbork Castle. While we were here, there's actually an Air Force base just to the south of it, and we got to see some MiGs. The Polish Air Force uses MiGs, the Russian MiGs, and so we got to see them flying. Of course, being from Moose Jaw, 15-wing Moose Jaw, I love seeing the different planes, and so that was a treat to get to see the MiGs.
So Malbork is famous because it is the largest castle in the world measured by land area, so it's recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And it dates back to the 13th century. It's a Teutonic castle and fortress. So there's several different layers. We took probably 1,000 pictures of it, all obviously, but we got to visit the armories. That is a hussar in the center with the wings on the back. They were mainly there to intimidate people as they advanced during wars and battles. So that was really cool to see. There are a lot of reenactors in the tourist areas that wear those costumes as well. But
for me, going through the armories was a treat because I used to be a competitive fencer. So to be able to see the swords that they would have used back then, and then some of the techniques that they had explained on the wall was interesting. But there's a large misconception that firearms weren't used alongside swords, and that's not in fact true. Many would carry a firearm alongside their sword. It's just you couldn't trust your firearm. So it might not work, but you only got a couple of shots. And this is a multi-shot revolver, which is also something that historians will argue about when they started to come around. So it was, for me, it was an absolute treat to get to go through the armory and see some of these pieces up close.
Top left picture is a statue of the old masters, the grandmasters, who were the high level folks in the Teutonic Order. It was layers and layers of castle. You started kind of in the outer ways. There were different moats. Some were dry, some would have water, and you worked your way into the inner sanctum, the oldest part.
And only the Grand Masters would have been allowed in every single part of the castle. You would have been allowed in certain areas, and you would have had to go through checkpoints to move on to the next area. The stained glass throughout, as you can imagine, with a Teutonic castle, it was like going to a museum itself, and they were everywhere. The floors, the stained glass, and as we'll go through the photos, and we'll explain this in just a moment, but as you went through, there were hidden little art pieces all over the place. This here is the furnace heating system for the entire castle. One main chamber. They would have had fireplaces dotted throughout, of course, to add supplemental heat. But see these little brass holes in the floor? Air movement would have heated from this main fireplace that would have been under the castle. They would have kept it burning, and then the warm air would have come up through these, and then you could control the temperature in the room by closing them or opening them. And apparently it wasn't uncommon at some of the events to have a little mini Marilyn Monroe moment with a dress being flapped up because the air was coming up these little holes. So this castle had central heating. And then you would supplement it with a little fire in each of the other rooms. the main gate to get into the central area.
This is the convent kitchen, which was something that was just enormous. You can see the big hood over the hearth center and the lower center picture there. Really cool. The well on the right side there's a statue of stork on top, and that's good luck.
So these are the little pieces that I was telling you about. These little heads were carved in all over the place. As Karla mentioned, we were here for 4 or 5 hours. We took like 1,000 photos. And I don't doubt that we probably took 100 different photos of these little figurines that are carved into the rock. They're everywhere, had different faces. Some of them were funny, some of them were scary. Some of them looked like they were in pain or were just there. Very, very interesting. So you could almost play hide and seek, trying to find these little guys all over the place. And there's Karla's cousins. More of the incredible interior. We have a blacksmith in one of the motifs there, more of the stained glass, more of the paint, the flooring throughout as well. It was so incredible to see the use of color throughout this Teutonic castle. So the motifs, gargoyles.
Malbork was very badly damaged during the Second World War, so it is still in the process of being restored, but to look at it from the street, you would never know. This is St. Anne's Chapel, and I had the honor of going through Malbork back in 2008, years ago with my cousin for the first time. It was the off season and many of the places were not open yet, so we didn't go to the armory, that sort of thing. The chapel had just opened a year prior, so this was one of the first things we were very excited about seeing as new visitors again, and having not been able to enter it before. So again, it had been restored back to what it looked like originally.
You could spend all day here. In fact, I think most people do spend all day here, but we had other places to go. So we started touring the outside. And if I'm not mistaken, it's this one on the right. That's the washroom, isn't it?
No,
That's the tower one. We'll get to it in a moment, but we got to see their original washrooms that were in place and where everything would have come out and into the moat. Yeah, the toilet tower. Not the toilet tower, but this is the brewery. So the castle would have had its own brewery, and I brew my own beer too. So this area was interesting for me, but there's where they would have stored everything. And then of course, some of the motifs. I didn't come away with beer, but I came away with mead, which is honey wine. So fermented honey, something that I also quite enjoy.
We went to visit my cousin's family. So there's me in the top left picture there. My cousin who was left there, and then his mother and dad, and she is actually my second cousin. So I guess what I'm calling my cousin is my second cousin once removed. My mom's side of the family was Polish, and it was wonderful connecting with them. We've been in touch since the mid-90s, and we've been very excited to visit each other a few times. So this is their house. My cousin's dad is an architect, so he designed and built this. They have a lovely yard. He's mostly retired now, so he spends a lot of time landscaping it. And they live in a small village of about a couple hundred people. So
we were lucky enough as part of this visit, Radek and Ola have a small, what they call summer house. And so very similar to what we would call cottages. And it's lovely in this forest, completely tucked away, very, very simple kitchen, living room, 2 bedrooms upstairs, nothing super fancy, but you get to explore this area every single day right outside your front door.
they're very fortunate. On one side, there's a pond, and the other side, there's a lake. So lots of water, lots of opportunity for fishing. There's a sauna, which is open to the community as well.
The neighborhood dogs. And then I got to do a little fishing. So I love the outdoors. I love fishing. I love hunting. So for me, this was where I wanted to be.
And it was cool because we thought we're right up to the countryside. It's going to be very quiet and that sort of thing. Well, I didn't actually realize until we got here that the population density is not like Canada. So we thought we were in the wilderness, and then there's a farm just over the way. So we were never really isolated, and that was kind of an eye opener for me because I'm used to going, up north in Saskatchewan and being able to get around and not meet other persons. So.
More of Karla's snails. Some of the cider, of course, Poland known for their apples, so cider is quite popular over there. Bigos made by grandma. So this was Ola's grandmother that made this specially for us because she heard that we had tried Bigos and had loved it. So she made it for us and sent it out to the cottage. It was a lovely, lovely gesture and so good. So back in the city, found leftover Vigos as we're going away. And again, the crane in the bottom right-hand corner, and then each of the cities will have a pirate ship as well. Sopot, Gdynia, and Gdansk each have their own pirate ship that they will take people out on if you want to go for a cruise between the three cities. And so they each have a different tourist boat. So they had different kind of themes. And so that was interesting to see. Ferris wheel down in Old Town.
One of the old tenement houses, many were built in the Dutch style.
This was the opera, I believe, and concert hall around the corner from the crane that was in the middle. Again, general markets.
It was a rainy day, so we went inside.
They've repurposed a lot of the older buildings. And so this is the Amber Museum on the left, center, and right, and then some of the outside. So amber, of course, in the Baltic is one of those things that we still don't quite know how it was made, but there are theories about it that it is, you know, the sap from the trees. Why is it so concentrated in this area? They still don't know. Even the museum was a little ambiguous on why it was there, but they believe it was, there was an ancient forest there that was flooded as things melted. They're at the bottom, and then as the waves break them up, the amber comes up on shore. And we'll show you a little bit later. We actually went amber hunting. And so that was an interesting, fun day.
This is a beautiful, beautiful
Yeah.
museum. It is in the Great Mill Building, which again is a Teutonic Knight built building from the 1300s. It had seen many different functions over the last little while, and it actually functioned as a mill up until the beginning of the Second World War. It was closed for a few years and actually just opened again in July of 2021. So they've done some great repurposing, as Chris mentioned, different exhibits, some things that have been made out of amber, jewelry, sculptures, that sort of thing. Just lovely to see. And then there's the outside there. You can see lower left corner is a model of what the mill looked like and how the water helped to turn the wheels.
And then this is the water coming through the original channel, and it's still there. So the water would have come down this channel, moved all the wheels, which of course would have moved the gears, which would have moved the grinders. It would have been an incredibly powerful a mill back in the day with all of the different wheels and gears that they had.
This is called the Guild House, and it's an example of Prussian facade style architecture, which is fairly common in Gdansk. So it's got kind of that board sheeting on it, and because the water goes around it, it's now a restaurant. Some other really cool statues and things we saw in the neighborhood there. More supplements. Lard is still very popular as a snack on bread. So we had 3 different lards, some pickles, and 3 different types of bread to try. I love it.
Try it. Don't write it off right away. The lard on the bread, I know it sounds a little weird for maybe our culture here in Canada, but it's flavored. So one of them was apples, one of them was cranberries, and I think the other was pork flavored. So it had more of the meat that was actually in it. Delicious with a beer and some pickles. It's a fantastic little treat.
The picture on the left is Amber Alley. It's called Mariaka Street in Polish, and it's quite famous for the artisans that work there, jewelry, sculptures, things like that. Very affordable. These are some of the water spouts that are on that street as well. It's Old Town Hall on the right. We mentioned it earlier. It has a clarion bell, which plays lovely music at the top of every hour. Its tower was destroyed in the Second World War, but it was actually rebuilt shortly thereafter.
Is this the old armory here in the top left?
Yes.
So that's the old, would have been the old town armories from back in the day. So you wouldn't have kept your weapons at home. They would have been in a central repository. And so that's the armory, but just gorgeous how they have brought back so many of these old buildings. So Radek, they're with us again, found this little beer bar back when he first started working there. He works close to Old Town. And so this is his little place that he likes to hang out. The cool thing about it is you go in and you tell the waiters what you are feeling like for a beer. You want something fruity, you want something dry, something sweet. And they will go to their back fridge and they will select some options for you. No extra charge, it's just part of their service. So you get what you want. It's for me as a beer lover, this was This was a lot of fun.
And you can see the snail on this. Plagued by snakes. This is a really neat old park. It's not as old as other parks. It is Olivsky Park from about 1700s. Famous for this cathedral, where we saw another pipe organ concert, which I think is the next slide. There, very, very Gothic, Baroque, lots of different layers there. It was fabulous. And then the park outside is just beautiful. A lot of it is done in the French style, so you'll see some trees coming up. It's also an arbor here with tropical plants, which is really cool.
It's 36 degrees in there. I had to take off several layers. It was incredibly warm in there. So as we mentioned, every one of the cities has a pirate ship. So this one, if I remember correctly, that's the training ship. So this is a training ship for what we would consider sea cadets here in Canada. So you go and you would train on an old masted ship.
Gdynia is only about a 20-minute train ride from Gdańsk.
And it cost us $4 to get there for the three of us. The trains and public transportation are ridiculously cheap, almost always on time. And if they're not on time, they have visual display boards at each one of the stops to tell you why the train's not there yet, if you can read Polish. Yeah. So we had a couple of incidents where the train didn't show up, but they had a supplemental message in a time. That train, the supplemental train was there. It was very, very well done. Quite enjoyed it. So yeah, Gdynia was down the coast, and then we went to, there's their pirate ship, which has the serpent dragon on the front. And then we went to the aquarium.
A lot of their native plants and sea creatures, so that was kind of neat to see. Gdynia is a new city. I use air quotes with that. By Polish standards, it's only about 90 years old, so it's not ancient, and it grew up around the seaport there.
So the bottom right-hand corner, that picture there, I don't know what it is, but animals come up to me, and it doesn't matter if I'm in a zoo, an aquarium, or out in the forest. Animals come up to me for some strange reason, and it happened again. I was standing next, and they come over. So it's become a running joke with our travel that I haven't met an animal friend yet. Snapping turtle. We saw electric eels here too, didn't we? And then we went and had some fish. So it wasn't quite tourist season yet. It was maybe a little chilly for that time of the year. So we had the restaurant basically to ourselves and had some nice flounder and again, the supplements that come with it. Come on, there we go. For us, being from Canada, it was a beautiful day at the sea, but it was, I don't know, 10 or 12 degrees. So it wasn't too bad, but it was still just a gorgeous day. We've gone over, so I understand if anybody needs to leave. We appreciate you coming out today, so thanks very much. If you'd like to stick around, we don't have too much terribly left here. So this, we've moved on to Sopot, and the bear in the left-hand corner, very, very famous to the war effort.
Name is Botek, which means happy warrior.
Used to carry ammo and be a general mascot for the Polish army, and they memorialized them in
there are many statues
in a statue,
but he's in front of a street that's named after a battle that he was present at. I had to look that up. Why is he here?
Yeah, this is a crazy tourist town. This has some of the best beaches in Poland right here. And then the architecture is very interesting. You will see this building here quite a bit in Polish material and Polish travel magazines, sometimes called the Crazy House, Crooked House. It has no straight lines and very, very famous. And the bear is right across the street.
The lighthouse, the center and lower right, was actually kind of cleverly built. It actually disguises a chimney at the center of it, but it is a lighthouse. It's more functional for tourists getting a view now. But this is right on the beach, so there's a lot of big, expensive resort hotels here. There's also a little market area you can walk around, and I included a picture of gummy bears in the lower left. And my cousin shared a story that he's a couple of years younger than me, but he did never really have gummy bears growing up. It was something that he didn't have because Poland was still quite communist at the time and it was not available. So unless you had an uncle maybe that traveled or somebody that could leave the country and bring these things back, that was a special treat. So it still is to a lot of people who grew up in the communist times in Poland.
I lost count, but the number of each bin had a different kind of gummy bear in it, a different shape or whatever from Haribo. I don't know, there had to be 30 to 70 different types of gummy bears, and you could mix and match and go through it. I'm not a sweets person, but I was quite impressed with that.
Then we're coming out onto the pier. It is, the Sopot Pier is quite famous, built in 1827. And it's one of the longest, if not the longest, in most of Europe, in the Baltic region for sure. It is about 500 meters in length, so it's quite big.
Just be aware, if you're gonna go check it out, they charge you a fee to go out onto it. It's just a minimal fee, but it's to try and keep some of maybe what they consider riffraff off of those areas, so they just charge just a small fee.
And again, this place is very popular with celebrities. They don't want to be bothered necessarily by the rabble, so.
So these are expensive hotels here in the top right-hand corner. And then as you go to the left, which is cut off by the circular picture there, that's where all of their gorgeous condos are and apartments. They're just, and again, this is on that walking path that connects all three of the communities together. So you've got a spectacular view out the front of your condo. And then this is that path here. You can walk between Sopot, Gdansk, Gdynia, and they had a dedicated trail for rollerblades, bikes, and scooters if you wanted to. So people would go out in the evening and you'd rollerblade, bike, roller skate, whatever you wanted between the two communities. And if you didn't feel like going back on foot, you take the train. And the train ran through all the communities.
So we did hop a train. In the center is the Shipyard Memorial, which was built after the workers' strike in 1970. There were a number of people killed, and this kind of led into the solidarity movement. This one is to the earlier uprising that happened there, and then some pictures of the modern cranes as well as the medieval cranes. Gdansk is still known as a shipbuilding community. So. Another picture at night of Amber Alley.
For a photographer, Poland is a dream because it's a mix of the old and the new, the nature and the urban. If you can't find subject matter here, you're not looking close enough. Go a little bit slow and just enjoy.
This is the next day. My cousin took us out to one of the, I would equate it to a provincial park nearby the city. And we start off in the forest with balsams and pine, and you actually end up right on the ocean of Baltic there again. This beach is a popular place for looking for amber, and it's things you can still find. I think maybe our next slide here. So the left picture is from the Amber Museum. So that's a very large piece, probably as big as a fist. In the center, you'll see what you normally would find along the shore. So there's little bits and pieces, there's shells. And then to the right in that picture, it was the largest piece that I was able to find, and it's about the size of a dime. So that is a large piece to find. It didn't have any animals in it or anything like that, but really fun and fun day.
And if you are collecting it for personal use, you're not using it for commercial purposes, like to make jewelry or tourist trinkets and things like that, you can just go and take it. There is literally so much of it, you can go and take it. So there are a lot of folks that do that. But most of the amber that you're going to see is these little guys here, because the folks that have a license to collect any of the amber that'll get turned into jewelry, they're out there first thing in the morning, as soon as they can, they're out digging. They're trying to get the big pieces. And so to find a piece like that is quite rare. If you're just out there on a tourist visit or whatever, but you'll find all of these little pieces like this too.
We walked back on a paved path, so it was also very accessible, which was nice to see. People with mobility challenges. My cousin's son found this lizard, which we think is a skink, or a member of the skink family. Really neat. And then we took a short drive to the other side of the Gdansk to the Westerplatte, which you may be familiar with.
So this is where the Second World War started. And they've just started to find more discoveries at this site. So basically how the war started, Germany said, we are doing maneuvers in the sea. We're not doing anything. Don't mind us. Nothing to see here.
Gdansk was also known as the Free City of Danzig at the time. There's still a lot of German influence there. Everything is cool.
Don't mind us. Night falls, they send an artillery barrage into Westerplatte that flattened it, took out the barracks. The gentlemen that were stationed there didn't know what hit them. They were asleep in their barracks and they were obliterated. They have just started to find some of those soldiers' personal effects as they were doing some memorial work. Oddly enough, we were there when they were doing that memorial work. And so they were starting to do this, starting to dig, starting to put in foundations, and they found personal effects that are now artifacts to arguably one of the most terrible times in modern history. But it was so important for us to go there for the historic values of it. We've been to Auschwitz, we've been to Birkenau, and now we've been to Westerplatte. So this for us was quite important to go there. And the poppies, of course, representing remembrance. Around this, they also had maples. So for the Canadians in us, we love to see the maples when they were there. Come on. It's thinking. There we go. So these are one of the barracks,
Guardhouse number 1, I believe.
the guardhouse, that was shelled, and you're going to see the damage. They invited you to go in if you wanted. It's considered ruins, enter at your own risk, and you're about to see why. All of the concrete is still hanging from the rebar.
Safety standards are maybe not quite the same as what they are here in North America.
No safety standards for here. You could have easily fallen into any of those crevices and cracks, been stabbed by the rebar, tripped, whatever. So if you are going to go, be very, very, very careful.
Unlike some of the other sites in the Second World War, there's not a lot else other than this guardhouse remaining at Westerplatte. A lot of it was completely destroyed. There's now very much a large park around the area, and you can walk to this. There are some small, I guess you call them souvenirs, things you can buy that say Westerplatte on them. It is very much a memorial site.
And then this is back in Old Town along the canal. And so this is like a food court. It's like a food court, a co-op restaurant. Each one of the restaurants has their front facing kind of stall where you can go up, place your order or whatever. But the eating area is communal. So if Karla wanted hot dogs and I wanted burgers from 2 different places, or you wanted ramen and spaghetti from that place over there, you could make your individual orders and then just enjoy it. There's a rooftop bar, but it was so beautiful outside. We ate out right next to the canal, and handmade cocktails. The ramen was some of the best ramen that I've ever had in my life. And for the 3 of us, the whole meal was $21 Canadian.
Poland is very affordable as a tourist and traveler. The most expensive part is your flight in most cases.
Yeah. Once you get on the ground, it's cheap.
Other evening shops from our last night there. We had ice cream on the way back to the apartment, and then we cracked open Chris's mead that he purchased at Malvern Castle.
I was too afraid to try and bring it back. I was really worried that it would break, because it was a clay vessel. And so I was quite worried that it would break. So instead of risking that, we had it on the balcony to celebrate our trip.
So this last little bit here is very short, but I'll talk a little bit about the ancient fortifications of Gdańsk. So you can see kind of the zigzag of the waterways, the canals there. That's following the lines of the old fortifications, the city wall, that sort of thing. The small circle in the center is where we were staying on the south part of Great New Island. And the next few pictures will be down on that larger circle there. So we had some time to kill before heading to the airport, and my cousin said, let's go for a little walk. There's a neat little park. The other thing in Poland, a lot of the parks are not manicured 100%. A lot of them are left natural, so it's great for pollinators and things like that. And will that one plug it? Sorry. You'll see that pointy part in the top right corner. That's one of those old fortification areas in one of the canals. So popular with kayakers. You can go all the way through the whole system there and actually go right out to the ocean if you wish, or you can stay within the town site. There's also a lot of underground areas you can take your kayak if you're so adventurous. And so you'll see right here, there's a bit of a fortification lock. If you wanted to come into Gdańsk on the water, that was your option. That spot right there was your only option to come into the city. One way in, one way out by boat, and they would control who could come in at that time with that. And then if I remember the stories correctly, the foot way to get in was over here. And you can still kind of see it if you're up on top of that hill. So there's that area that I was pointing out, and then the lock to come in. And so folks were out kayaking in this area. Daily occurrence, you'd go kayaking on the canals, just beautiful. The whole Tri-City area is bordered to the southwest by this wonderful forest and network of trails that Chris has mentioned a few times. So what that says in Polish in the bottom left corner is Tri-City Park. It is an affluent area, so there's one of those little mansions in the top picture there. Beautiful, very treed, very private. And again, on our way to the airport. So that's what you can see in the pictures here as we're flying in.
So this park is incredibly popular to the area. If you can get as close to this park as possible, that's kind of a status thing to be around this park. What did you find for trails throughout the system?
There's over 500 meters of trails. It's
And
amazing.
you can once again walk from the three cities, Gdansk, Gdynia, and Sopot that are in the area through this forested area. I consider it like one of our national parks with three cities attached to it that they all share. And the one little area that we did on our walk was only about 1.5 kilometers, maybe 2 kilometers tops. But I think I counted 7 or 8 picnic sites, many others that you could have made for yourself if you wanted to stop for a picnic. Just absolutely stunning. Very similar to Crescent Park or Walk-A-Mile here in Moose Jaw, just 900 times bigger. So
Polish people have 2 national hobbies. One is waiting in line, they say, and the other is walking. A lot of them will walk. They don't own a vehicle. Again, public transportation is great. So places like that park were wonderful to see.
and so that's our presentation. So thank you very much for being with us today. I know that we went over. Yeah, any questions?
It happens sometimes. We were mainly in tourist areas, so you did see some signage in English in a few cases. Other times it was completely in Polish. As Chris had kind of mentioned, I have been trying to learn some Polish. I've been on the Duolingo program, and I've just passed 900 days of learning. I do 1 lesson a day. I know quite a few nouns and a few verbs, but a lot of the stuff I was learning were a little funny. Some of the sentences that I know how to say in Polish is the cat is slightly tomatoes with a knife. So not particularly useful in a tourist setting, but it was still helpful this time. I know I've actually been Poland 3 times this 3rd trip. I understood a lot more of the background chatter, which was kind of neat. And I hope maybe on our next trip, I will know a little bit more to string it all together.
I can't learn languages. I struggle with learning new languages very, very much. I've tried about 4 different, and I can read it, I can partially understand it, but I can't make it come back out. However, in Poland, the situational awareness, you can follow along the conversations very easy. Many of the places because we stayed in apartments, so we had to go get groceries from the local area, and we didn't stay in the tourist areas. So you go to the grocery store and they didn't speak English whatsoever. Did not have a problem. I would go to bars where they wouldn't speak English, didn't have a problem. Keep cool, calm, slow down, kind of pay attention to the context, and you'll be able to communicate no problem. Hand signals are just fine, smile on your face, and everybody's good to go. Unfortunately, in our last spot, I did have to help out one of the cashiers at one of the places. The English like to come over and use Poland as their playground, and the Polish don't appreciate it. They are, I guess, quite loud. Some soccer hooligans will come over because, of course, Poland is big into the soccer world too. And so the English, unfortunately, have a very bad reputation. So if you're speaking English over there, even if you're not from England, you kind of get a nose turned up at you until the conversation starts and they go, oh, you're Canadian, you're fine. But I had to help one of the cashiers at the corner store. A group of Englishmen were being very vulgar and rude, and I had to step in and help her. And she was very thankful for that because we were staying right across the street and she had just seen us for 4 days straight. So that neighborhood feel is very there, even if you're not from the neighborhood. It's very fun and inviting. I've always compared Poland, and I've only been there twice. I call it Little Canada. Everything that we have here in Canada, they have in Poland, just smaller. And the people are very much like us here in Canada. Very open and welcoming. They want you to be part of their neighborhood. They want you to have a good time. So if you're open to that and you're open to being a little patient and enjoy the culture that's there, you'll fit right in and have no problems to travel there. So if there's no other questions, thank you so much for coming out. We are, now that COVID is kind of down and out, we are traveling more and more and more. So you can follow us again on our Facebook and social media pages. We'll have more photos coming up, likely from Poland here in the next little while, a bit more detail. Of course, we can't give the detail in these presentations, but we'll give some more detail on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And then we also will have some photos from our recent trip to San Francisco on there as well. So we went down to San Francisco for Christmas and New Year's. And so I see the fireworks over the bay and explored a bit of that area. So you can find us on social media. Wandering Whimsy, and Whimsy is with a Z. So thanks so much.